message on parchment so thin the emperor's orders showed through arrived in a half-frozen German village on a Tuesday in October. The elder read it 3 times before understanding his tongue, prayers, and taxes now belonged to the great Khan. In our world, the Mongols pulled back from Vienna in 1242. They vanished like a summer storm. But Ögedei did not die in December 1241. He lived. The storm did not break. The first sign came from a river. In spring 1243, a fisherman on the Rhine hauled a severed hand wearing a crusader ring. The ring belonged to a duke who marched east the year before. It passed from merchant to priest to cardinal. By the time the cardinal reached Rome, the hand had rotted to bone. The news had not. Rome fell in 1245. Not by catapults. Mongols learned from Chinese engineers to dam rivers and flood fortifications. The Tiber was redirected. The Vatican became a marsh. Pope Innocent IV fled through a sewer captured outside Orvieto. His execution was brief. The church was not destroyed, domesticated. The Mongols collected religions like gold. Nestorian Christians served at court for decades. The Mongol governor of Germany appointed a local archbishop to keep bells ringing and tithes flowing east. The Latin Mass continued, but the prayer for the Pope became a prayer for the Khagan's long life. By 1250, all Europe west of the Dnieper was divided into appanages. General Baiju received France. He never learned French. He ruled from a yurt in the Louvre courtyard, using the Great Hall for archery practice. Peasants noticed least. They had always been poor. New taxes were heavier, documents now vertical. But the harvest came. The church stood. For most, conquest was a change of names above and deepened silence below. Cities were remade. Bruges became the western terminus of a trade route running uninterrupted to China. A merchant could buy silk from Hangzhou, paper from Samarkand, steel from Damascus, furs from Siberia. No borders, no warring princes. In our world, the Silk Road was legend. Here it was a highway. Merchants thrived. Feudal nobility, stripped of castles, either fled to forests or adapted. A German baron, von Falkenstein, learned Mongolian, Persian, Chinese. Within a decade he governed Italy. His descendants spoke Mongolian at home, Italian on the street, loyal subjects of the Khagan. The Great Plague arrived in 1347, traveling by caravan along Mongol trade routes. It crossed Eurasia in 18 months. Death toll was higher than in our history. Europe weakened by forced migration, disrupted agriculture, trauma, entire regions abandoned. Wolves returned to the Rhine. But the Mongols had a centralized bureaucracy. The Khagan ordered quarantines, sent Chinese physicians, counted the sick, distributed grain by imperial decree. The plague confirmed Mongol rule. The empire acted. Local lords could only obey. The Renaissance never began. Not because learning was suppressed. The Mongols built observatories, translated Greek and Arabic texts, maintained universities in Baghdad and Samarkand, but the Renaissance was born of competition. City-states, rival courts, a fractured church. Under a single empire, no competition. Only patronage from one source, and the source wanted maps, navies, artillery plans. The printing press arrived from China. A Mongol official in Mainz received Chinese block-printed books in 1372 and hired local monks to copy the technique. The first printed works were administrative texts in Mongolian with Latin translations. The Bible was not printed until 1410, with the censor's approval. Christianity survived, adapted. In Polish and Hungarian villages, the Virgin Mary sometimes had Asian features. The cross bore the endless knot of Tibetan Buddhism. The Pope, a figurehead appointed by the Khagan and living in Avignon under Mongol guard, issued a bull in 1480 acknowledging the Khagan as protector of the faith. Not surrender, survival. Then the Mongols went to sea. In our world, the age of discovery was driven by European desperation to bypass Ottoman trade monopolies. Here, the trade routes were open, but the Khagan's treasury overflowed. Treasure asks questions. A Mongol admiral, born in what had been Sweden, proposed a western expedition in 1492. His ships were Chinese junks built on the Baltic by shipwrights from Guangzhou. He called it a search for new peoples to tax. He found the Americas, landed on the coast of Maine in October 1492. The Wabanaki fled. He planted the Khagan's standard. Colonization was a Mongol project. Chinese, Persian, and Mongol settlers crossed the Atlantic before any Italian or Spaniard. The first eastern seaboard cities were built in the style of Karakoram, Tented pavilions, silkworms in heated sheds, Buddhist temples, languages were Mongolian and Mandarin, mixed with conquered tongues. By 1550, the Mongol Empire stretched from the Pacific to the Atlantic, held together by a single script and one throne. The nation-state never emerged. Nationalism found no fertile ground. Why would a Bavarian peasant care about independence when his taxes, language, religion, and trade all flowed through an empire 3 centuries old? Gunpowder came late. The Mongols had it for centuries but used it for siege weapons, not personal arms. The hand cannon, musket, matchlock developed slowly. The empire had no enemies to rush technology, no competing kings, no desperate armies. Peace is a terrible incubator of innovation. The single greatest casualty is an idea that the individual can change history. In our world, the Renaissance, Reformation, Enlightenment were movements of individuals. Luther, Galileo, Newton, Rousseau, people who broke with tradition. Here, where the crowd has been unified for 500 years, the empire speaks and obeys. No room for the disruptor. The genius becomes a bureaucrat, the revolutionary a tax collector. The centuries pass. The empire does not fall. It grows heavy, slow. The Khagan's court, now on the Volga, debates granary wall height for 3 years. Printing presses produce manuals. Bureaucrats file reports. Peasants harvest. Merchants trade. Priests chant. The world, unified and stable, settles into a long march toward a future that never arrives. Visit Prague on a winter morning. Gothic spires stand, but surrounded by Mongol pavilion roofs. The statue of Saint Wenceslas, replaced by Genghis Khan on a stone horse. Latin carved over with vertical script, the same that decorates a temple in Kyoto, a palace in Beijing, a port office in New Karakoram, on the coast of what we called Massachusetts. In a village in what was once France, an old man sits by the fire, speaking to his grandson in a language half Frankish, half Mongolian. The boy asks, "Grandfather, was there ever a time before the Khan?" The old man looks into the fire. He tries to remember his own grandfather's story. A king, a cross, a crusade. The memory is too thin. The bones of that old world are dust along the Silk Road. He shakes his head. "No," he says, "there was no before." The boy accepts this. It is easier than imagining a world that could have been otherwise. Think about the maps you take for granted, the borders, languages, history you were taught as inevitable. They are fragile, contingent.